Hello and welcome to CTV News Across Canada for Saturday, March 8th. We've got the top local stories from coast to coast, stories that affect you and the country. Thanks for joining us.
Mr. Mark Carney!
When Mark Carney launched his campaign to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader, he did so in the Edmonton neighborhood he grew up in.
As I learned on the ice out there, when it's cold, when your opponent is tough, you have to step up.
The other presumed frontrunner, Chrystia Freeland, has also leaned on her Alberta roots.
When I was really little, in addition to a grain and canola farm, we raised cattle.
You wouldn't normally think Liberal leadership race, let's focus on Alberta.
The Liberals hold just 2 seats in our province, one in each of the big cities. Political consultant Tom Vernon says the focus on Alberta during this race is strategic. The leadership vote uses a points system where every riding is worth the same, regardless of how many registered Liberals vote.
That riding that has 100 members has the same riding weight as it would with 1,000 members.
All 4 candidates are making their final pitches to Canadians ahead of this weekend's vote as the country grapples with unprecedented uncertainty amid a trade war with the United States.
A plan to build a strong economy, to create new trading relationships, and secure our borders.
I am the leader who is uniquely qualified to fight for us right now.
The Liberal Party is best when we are a big tent, when we do social policy well and we do fiscal responsibility.
I have the experience and the expertise to deal with Donald Trump.
Whoever wins is expected to call a general election in short order. Vernon says Albertans shouldn't expect the political pandering to continue.
You know, in the next election, it's going to be pretty slim pickings when it comes to the number of seats that they're going to be able to win in Alberta.
Jeremy Thompson, CTV News, Edmonton.
As these videos show, this home has been the target of gunfire in the past. 5 times, in fact, since 2018, 3 times last year alone.
What makes this incident more concerning, though, is that the shooting occurred within the home, whereas previous incidents occurred where shots were fired at the house from a distance.
And this time, not only did the shooting take place inside the home, but this time the shooting was deadly. 20-year-old Nilakshi Raguthis shot to death, a 26-year-old man also shot, and a German Shepherd dog killed.
That's my daughter's best friend, and they've been there so many years, and it's going to tear us apart.
Police say the shooting took place at 6:30 a.m. The security video obtained by CTV News shows a dark car pulling up and waiting a few doors away from the home on Solace Road near Castlemore just after 6 a.m.
2 suspects were seen fleeing the residence and entering a newer model 4-door black Acura TLX.
Today's shooting sending shockwaves through the neighborhood.
We thought all finished, but so surprises happening. But very sad what happens.
I'm scared, but what if I do upset? I'm scared.
It's tragic, absolutely tragic. I feel for the family. I feel for the surrounding neighbors. I think the neighborhood at large has been probably on edge.
Still, many neighbors say they saw this coming.
I figure with so many what I would have perceived to have been warning shots targeting the exterior of the house, I imagine this was something very personal and potentially was going to come to a point where it would be deadly. And here we are today.
While police will not confirm whether the shooting is related to a tow truck turf war, many area residents say people who live inside the home are connected to the industry.
They own part of the business.
And CTV News has obtained City of Toronto Licensing Tribunal documents which indicate a Navith Raguthis, whom federal records associate with the home in question, was granted a probationary tow truck driver's license in January 2023.
Everybody else feels fear on the neighborhood, and we're not able to answer any real questions because they haven't caught anybody.
Neighbors say 5 people lived in the upper portion of the home with 2 others in the basement, and they say they're concerned there will be more gunfire.
The person who's deceased may not have been the target, which would have me to believe that this is potentially not over.
To date, no arrests have been made in connection to any of the shootings at this home. Raguthis' application for a tow truck license was granted on a 3-year probationary period subject to periodic checks for criminal, driving, or bylaw convictions or charges. Reporting live from Janice Golding, now back to Nathan.
Bottles were imported from Turkey in 2022 during a countrywide shortage of children's medication. But Alberta's so-called Turkish Tylenol was fraught with problems, and in 23, the drugs were pulled. Now they're likely shipping out again.
A group approached us to help provide this medication to the war-torn areas of the world. We said we'd work with them. So we're working with them and Health Canada, and we'll have more to say if we come to an agreement.
Experts say the meds pose serious health risks when given to infants, but the Premier can't quite explain why what's not up to standards here is all right elsewhere.
Well, Ukraine's in the middle of a war, as you probably know.
And Danielle Smith only took one question on the matter Friday before leaving her media availability.
With AHS and the government? In the middle of a war zone, we're going to say, here, take our garbage medication that we say isn't good enough for Alberta kids? That is not okay.
Alberta has been sitting on 1.4 million bottles of the medication. The province paid $70 million to MH Care Medical for the drugs, but only received about 30% of the shipment. And now, MH Care is in the middle of a very public AHS contracting scandal.
Things have gotten progressively worse for this government over the last month as the various layers of the onion have been peeled back on this scandal, and we've sort of found out more and more. What they thought might be a relatively cheap political win actually turned out to be a political cost to them.
We asked the Premier's office if the drugs were being sold or donated, but did not hear back before deadline.
And Tim joins us tonight with more. Tim, if the deal is finalized, Alberta taxpayers aren't off the hook quite yet.
Yes, Ian, according to Globe and Mail reporting, provincial documents show it could cost the province as much as $275,000 to send all of that medication to Ukraine. And the clock is ticking here, Ian, because apparently those same documents show all of these drugs are set to expire within the next 13 months.
Tim, thanks very much.
March break isn't off to the best start for Pat Blanchette and his family. Their flight to Florida was canceled this morning, and while they've managed to get onto another flight, they booked their trip before the start of the trade war.
Just the relationship right now, but it's out of control in terms of what's going on.
Despite that, Blanchette plans to leave a little bit of Canadian kindness behind in the U.S.
Bring in actual maple cookies from Farm Boy, that'll leave for the service workers and things. Yeah, just make us look good.
Barbara Tavares has to go to the U.S. for work, but like many Canadians, she's now rethinking her travel plans.
I would opt to go somewhere else, definitely, 100%. I don't think I would want to travel to the States for leisure with everything that's happening. I also just feel like kind of like an attack on the America's nicest neighbors.
Travel experts say they've seen bookings to the United States this March break plummet.
We saw actually a 20% increase in travel cancellations on pre-existing bookings from Canada to the US. And then if I look specifically at February 2025 and compare that to February 2024, we have seen a 40% drop in bookings from Canada to the US.
The loonie has also hit a 22-year low, and Canadians are choosing destinations like Japan and Australia, where the dollar can go further.
Well, we thought about going to Florida over the Easter weekend, but we changed our plans, and we're headed to the Caribbean today. I do have to admit that I do think about now travel to the U.S., so, and buying Canadian things. So it has definitely had an influence on me.
And after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau encouraged Canadians to travel and vacation in Canada, some are choosing to avoid going to the U.S. altogether.
Definitely for the last 4 years, like the next 4 years, I should say, definitely not going to.
Travel experts also note that whenever a new administration is elected in the U.S., Canadians tend to delay traveling there for about 6 to 8 months. Patricia.
All right, CTV's Kimberly Fowler live for us tonight. Thank you.
The assessment was blunt.
After years of reviewing how the St. John police handled the 1983 murder of George Lehman, the chief said there was one main factor that led to the wrongful convictions of Walter Gillespie and Robert Mailman.
The main shortfall in Mr. Mailman and Mr. Gillespie's police investigation was tunnel vision.
The review also found the policing environment of the 1980s and different laws and regulations at the time also contributed.
Investigators focused on Mr. Mailman and Mr. Gillespie. They stayed on that track and looked for evidence that would support their case. Today we would look for a number of different factors and evidence that would support or not support that case.
The two men were found guilty of second-degree murder in 1984, a year after Lehman's body was discovered near Rockwood Park. The cause of death was severe head trauma, but police never found any murder weapons nor the vehicle used to transport the victim's body. 40 years later, a New Brunswick court ruled the pair had been victims of a miscarriage of justice. Gillespie, who spent 21 years behind bars, passed away last April, just months after being exonerated. Mailman was in jail for 18 years. He has been diagnosed with terminal cancer.
I would have liked to meet with Mr. Mailman, as painful as I think it would be for him to meet with the police. I would have liked to do that.
A retired RCMP officer completed the report, and today a summarized version was released.
This case was all about, from day one, of getting Bobby Mailman.
Innocence Canada represented the men in the court proceedings. Jerome Kennedy was one of the lawyers.
We've got 100 cases at Innocence Canada right now. And what we know from experience and from the numerous inquiries that have been held in Canada, that despite the best efforts of all involved, as long as human beings are involved in the system, mistakes will be made.
In a statement sent to Canadian press, Robert Mailman said if the St. John police would acknowledge their mistake and make the full report public, he would be satisfied. Avery McRae, CTV News, St. John.
In the small border town of Havelock, Quebec, it was an early morning rescue. A family lost in the woods after crossing into Canada, including 2 children aged 1 and 2.
There were the 4 of them who were sitting under a tree, completely frozen, unable to move anymore, and just kind of hoping that somebody will find them.
Havelock has one official border crossing, but the village about 75 kilometers southwest of Montreal has long stretches of the border that run through the forest and fields.
They were walking in the woods for hours, so they must have been walking in circles without being able to find their way out.
With these strong winds, the overnight temperature felt close to -15. In the heavily wooded area, officers couldn't use vehicles and had to search on foot. They found the family at 4:15 in the morning. The parents had lost their shoes in the crossing. The children were wearing coats, but didn't have any other winter gear.
They didn't have any chucks, they didn't have any gloves, they didn't wear boots, they just had shoes, they had sneakers.
The region is monitored by helicopter. In January, Quebec's public security minister said there are 800 officers patrolling what's known as the Swanton sector. It's one of the most heavily trafficked areas, going both ways. Last year, of the 26,000 crossings going into the U.S., 19,000 of them, nearly 3/4, were here. Advocate Rivka Augenfeld says there needs to be changes to how people can claim refugee status.
We can only plead with the government to go back to something that's more humane and more respectful of people's human rights and more respectful of people's rights to seek asylum, to make a refugee claim.
The RCMP says in recent months, it's getting frequent search and rescue calls.
People that are helping them to cross the border, they will just tell them, go in this direction and cross a field, cross wood, and then another field, and you'll be in Canada. However, it is not that simple because they don't know where they are going.
The family was taken to hospital in Chateauguay to be treated for hypothermia and is expected to survive. Kelly Gregg, CTV News, Havelock.
Debbie Etzel's family-owned winery in Abbotsford welcomes guests from all over the country, but current rules make it tough to keep them as customers.
They want to bring some wine home or have it shipped there, and they can't.
As of right now, she says she can only ship her wine domestically to Manitoba and Alberta with a surcharge, but that could change soon.
And our goal is a permanent restructuring of trade across the country so that we're never in this position again.
Premier Eby Thursday announced his NDP government's push for reducing interprovincial trade barriers, a response to Donald Trump's tariff threat, and other provinces seem to be on board.
We've been waiting a long time for this.
BC's wine industry has been hit hard in recent years with poor weather, and tariff threats could impact the cost of materials, including glass and yeast. So easing cross-country trade is not just a bonus, but a lifeline.
It's sort of a combination of red tape and cost is what it comes down to. And if those things are made easy and understandable and approachable, it'll be a great thing.
And it's not just about selling more BC products. Eby says new legislation, if passed, would also make it easier for workers' credentials, including doctors, nurses, and teachers, to be recognized in other provinces. The premier saying it could also benefit BC comms giant TELUS, a company that's faced challenges in operating in parts of eastern Canada. A company rep telling CTV News, TELUS welcomes Premier Eby's support as we fight to break down interprovincial trade barriers in the telecom space and increase competition in Canada. One expert says the policy change could eventually result in a major economic boost.
Studies have told us that by removing these internal trade barriers through mutual recognition, it can boost the Canadian economy by over $200 billion.
Eby's expected to introduce the legislation next week, but any changes to interprovincial trade could take months. Kevin Chirac, CTV News, Abbotsford.
Winnipeg finally has a new top cop.
This position carries great responsibility, and I'm committed to serving all citizens of Winnipeg.
After months of delay, the police board announced Deputy Chief Gene Bowers will assume the role of police chief on March 10th. Bowers has been with the service since 1989, serving on the Manitoba Human Trafficking Team Committee, and he was assigned to the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Joint Task Force.
I think I have that experience. I have the background. I have the empathy, I think, to do this job.
Bowers replaces Danny Smythe, who retired last September. Art Stannard has filled in as interim chief. Bowers takes over the helm as Winnipeg struggles with retail theft and violent crime. The new chief is vowing to make the city safer.
Definitely we got to get back our members back into the community and accessible. So that's just one of the things.
Both Mayor Scott Gillingham and Police Board Chair Marcus Chambers expressed confidence in Bowers and internal selection.
When we looked at his breadth of experience, we felt it was the right decision that we've made.
Who's the individual that has the vision for this hour for our community? And Gene Bowers is that individual, and I know he'll do a great job as chief of police.
The announcement of the new chief was delayed for mid-December after the board received unspecified new information. Chambers says after doing more research, they found that information was without merit.
I don't want to dwell on that. The fact is that we have a candidate here that is an excellent candidate.
On the delay, Bowers says he simply had to respect the process.
Was it easy? No, but I respected the process. And today, the results of the process did what it was supposed to do.
The president of the Winnipeg Police Association says they are pleased that the Winnipeg Police Board has announced a decision, and they look forward to working constructively with Bowers.
Jeff, why an internal candidate over someone outside the force?
Yeah, Police Board Chair Marcus Chambers says there were external candidates who applied, but he says they didn't impress the board as much as Chief Bowers did.
All right, thanks for this, Jeff.
Gates remain up around the entrance of the oldest school still operating in the city of Waterloo. The Waterloo Region District School Board closed Elizabeth Ziegler Public School on Monday after concerns about the facade of the building.
We're very mindful that this is unsettling for families, and we want to provide that clarity as soon as we possibly can.
A piece of the facade could be seen missing on Friday. Lemon says students were told to work on previously assigned material this week as they weren't able to get remote learning equipment deployed in time.
Because of the the state that the building's in, we haven't been able to deploy devices, so we couldn't make a move.
Next week is March break for public school students, giving inspectors more time to check the building.
They are continuing methodically to work through the school with their testing.
It's not yet clear, though, if the building will be open by the time students are scheduled to be back in class, and families will likely not know until the end of next week.
We are setting Friday as our target for an update for the community. We feel confident that we'll be able to provide that by Friday. If not, we will at least give a holding message around that.
Named after Elizabeth Ziegler, who spent 58 years as a teacher in Waterloo Region and was Waterloo County's first female principal, the school was the third elementary school built in Waterloo. Constructed during the Great Depression in 1931, the school was built in the Gothic Revival style with a stone entrance, stone turrets, and copper-topped domes. Waterloo designated it as a heritage landmark in 1985, which Lemon says is another reason extra due diligence is happening.
And that's why the building inspector is working so closely with us, is to acknowledge, I mean, I think they would work closely with us anyway in a circumstance like this, but they are definitely paying attention to this circumstance because of the status of that central core building.
The timing that they would just close the school was shocking. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare because no one can prepare for a piece of a school falling down.
A parent of a boy that attends the school tells me she's happy the board is keeping students safe, but many parents and guardians aren't able to be home during work hours.
I'm not sure what we would do. We're very lucky that we have family support that we can count on. And I know some older kids in the area are babysitting to cover the gap, but it's going to be really hard on parents to find last-minute childcare unexpectedly.
The City of Waterloo says it does have procedures in place for completing emergency repairs on heritage properties. The school board says if Elizabeth Ziegler is not able to open by the end of March break, they will put in resources to make sure that students are still able to participate in class from home. But again, the school board doesn't expect to announce a plan to families but until next Friday. Tony.
Okay, Colton Weens live in Waterloo with that update. Colton, thank you so much.
A Round Lake Bears fan is speaking out after experiencing an uncomfortable situation at a recent senior hockey game.
At one point, I felt like my safety was on the line.
On February 28th, Kayla Maxey attended the Round Lake Bears versus Wynyard Monarchs senior hockey game with her family. She says they went to go look for seats in the crowded arena. When coming across a spot on the stairs to stand, she says a man from the crowd stated they could not stand there. When she and her family did not move, Maxey says the man then proceeded to say racial comments.
You know, well, we pay taxes. Like, I don't even know where that even came from. I said, you know, I pay taxes too. Like, just because I live on a reserve or on First Nations does not mean I don't pay taxes.
Adding she felt humiliated and unsafe. Chief Shelley Bear of Ochapawis Nation says the actions were inappropriate and deemed to be racist, adding that the community can move forward from the situation by coming together.
Not only how we can heal from this, but how we can learn and share, educate with regards to First Nations people, our culture, our traditions, our teachings as well.
Bear says she appreciates the town of Wynyard's statement on social media, stating the town regrets the incidents that affected our Indigenous visitors and will be reviewing our policies, which includes our policy for alcohol consumption at hockey games and other events. Adding they are committed to fostering a welcoming and inclusive community for all.
I just want my kids to be able to go out there in the world and, you know, of hockey and be able to enjoy themselves and to not have to go into all these same types of situations that we've had to do.
Sierra D'Souza Butts, CTV News, Regina.
The school board did give up a large sum of money via transfers to this individual.
Sergeant Rob Derling says they launched their investigation last September when a school board official noticed the accounting errors and called police.
This individual was able to infiltrate and impersonate one of the local contractors tied to a capital project, and in doing so they were able to successfully convince the school board officials that, any money tied to the capital project could be sent to them.
Late Friday, the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board confirmed the crime happened to them, saying in a statement they're confident they will be able to recover substantially all of the funds that were taken. The board is also reassuring the school community that at no time were its computer systems ever compromised. On Thursday, 36-year-old Tyler Nathaniel Manning of Toronto was arrested at Pearson Airport after he returned to Canada. Police say he had been out of the country since October. Manning is now in Windsor police cells, facing 8 charges, including fraud, forgery, and laundering proceeds of crime. Sergeant Derling says the investigation is far from over, and while they can't say if there are any other victims, they do have a warning for all businesses and entities involved in electronic transfers.
Have someone review these particular transfers to make sure that wait a sec. Maybe I should actually verify with the person. Are you supposed to be receiving this? Is this the correct bank account?
Sergeant Derling says if you think you've been defrauded, no matter how much money, call their non-emergency line. You'll find a full list of charges for Manning online at ctvnewswindsor.ca. Stephanie?
Michelle Molesky with our top story tonight. Thank you, Michelle.